Hey everyone! Welcome to Trust Test Hub. I need to get this out, because what happened last Friday has been years in the making, and I'm not backing down now. My mother retired after 33 years teaching high school English. Big party at my parents' house. About 40 people, the whole extended family, plus dad's work friends and mom's teacher colleagues. I'm 36, still invited to family things, even though I'm pretty much treated like the screw-up who never got his life together. My older brother Marcus is 41, works in pharmaceutical sales, makes good money, married with 2 kids, golden child, always has been. My sister Vicky is 33, works in hospital administration, engaged to some guy named David who works in finance. Also golden. I'm the one who supposedly can't hold a job, still asks dad for gas money, got fired from Best Buy for stealing food from the break room 6 years ago. Except that's not actually what happened, but I'll get to that. I showed up to mom's party around 6 o'clock on Friday evening, brought a bouquet of mixed flowers from the grocery store, nothing fancy, maybe $15 worth, just trying to be decent. I walked in through the front door, said hello to a few relatives in the living room, made my way to the kitchen where Mom was arranging appetizers with Vicky and her friend Marley. Mom looked at the flowers in my hand. I held them out to her, told her congratulations on her retirement. She took them, looked at them for a long moment, then turned to face the entire kitchen full of people. She held the flowers up high and announced loud enough for everyone to hear, "Look everyone! He thinks $5 grocery store flowers, fix being a complete failure for 36 years. The kitchen went quiet for maybe 2 seconds. Then Marcus, who was leaning against the counter with a beer, started laughing. He said something about whether I used food stamps to buy them. A few of Dad's friends chuckled. Vicky added that I still thought they wanted me there, and it was actually sad. I stood there holding nothing because Mom had already set the flowers down on the counter like they were contaminated. Dad walked into the kitchen right then, raised his glass of bourbon, and made this big toast to his wife, who had one successful son, and one who still borrows gas money at his age. More laughter. One of Dad's friends, some guy named Jackson, who I'd met maybe twice, asked if I was the one who got fired from Best Buy. Mom nodded, said yes, for stealing food from the break room. Like it was this hilarious punchline she'd been waiting to deliver all night. Everyone exploded, full-on laughter, people slapping their knees. Someone said something about how I probably stole the flowers too. I smiled, set the flowers down on the counter next to where Mom had dropped them, walked out through the living room, past more relatives who had heard the commotion and were grinning at me, got in my car and drove home to my apartment. Here's what they don't know, what I've spent 6 years building toward, what I've been waiting for them to push me far enough to actually use. 6 years ago, I was 29, working at Best Buy in the mobile phone section, making okay money, but nothing impressive. I was dating this girl, Carrie. We'd been together for about 8 months, talking about moving in together. I was over at my parents' house one Sunday afternoon, helping Dad install a new ceiling fan in the guest bedroom. Mom, Marcus, and Vicky were all downstairs in the kitchen. I came down to grab some water and walked into the middle of a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. Mom was telling Marcus and Vicky about how I'd been taking food from the Best Buy break room, how management had talked to me about it, how she was so embarrassed that her son was stealing food like some kind of desperate vagrant. Marcus said I was pathetic, always had been. Vicky agreed, said Carrie was way too good for me and would figure it out eventually. Except none of that was true. I had never stolen anything from Best Buy. There had been no conversation with management. The whole thing was completely made up. But Mom was telling it like established fact, and Marcus and Vicky were eating it up, using it as more evidence that I was the family disappointment. I stood in the doorway for maybe 30 seconds, just listening. Then I walked back upstairs without saying anything, finished helping Dad with the fan, and went home. That night, I broke up with Carrie because I realized my own family had been poisoning every relationship I tried to build. 2 weeks later, I quit Best Buy, not because I was fired, but because I got a job offer from a tech startup doing customer service and account management. That startup got acquired 4 years ago. I got stock options as part of my compensation package when I was promoted to senior account manager. When the acquisition went through, those options were worth $240,000 after taxes. I've been living off my regular salary, investing the stock money carefully, building it up. I now have just over $318,000 in various accounts. I also own property. 2 years ago, I bought a duplex in a decent neighborhood as an investment property. I live in one unit, rent out the other. The rental income covers most of my mortgage. The property's worth about $410,000 now, based on recent comps in the area. My family thinks I'm barely scraping by, borrowing gas money from Dad, working some dead-end job. They think this because I've let them think it. Every time I see them, I dress down, drive my older car, never talk about work in any detail, occasionally mention being tight on money. I've played the role they assign me because I've been waiting for them to go too far, to push hard enough that I could justify what I've been planning to do. Friday night was that moment. See, here's the thing they also don't know. 3 years ago, Dad needed someone to co-sign on a refinance of their house. He'd had some credit issues, nothing major, but enough that the bank wanted a co-signer with better credit. Marcus refused, said his own mortgage and his kids' future college funds meant he couldn't take on any additional liability. Vicky had just gotten engaged and was planning a wedding, also refused. Dad asked me, the screw-up son, the one who supposedly had nothing going for him. But I also had excellent credit because I'd been meticulous about building it. I agreed to co-sign, went to the bank with him, signed all the papers, helped him refinance their house to a lower interest rate that saved them about $400 a month on their mortgage payment. They never thanked me properly. Dad mentioned it once, said he appreciated it, then never brought it up again. Mom acted like it was the least I could do after being such a disappointment my entire life. Marcus and Vicky didn't even acknowledge it. But I'm on that mortgage legal co-signer, which means I have certain rights regarding the property. And I've spent the last 3 years keeping meticulous records of every payment, every communication, every instance of them treating me like garbage, while I was literally helping keep their house afloat. Friday night, after I got home from the party, I sat in my apartment and made a list, documented every major humiliation over the past 6 years, every time they'd told the Best by stealing story to people, every time they'd introduced me to someone as their disappointment son, every family gathering where they'd made me the punchline. It's a long list. Then I started making phone calls, left messages with 3 different real estate attorneys whose names I'd already researched months ago, sent emails to 2 property management companies I'd been in contact with before, pulled up all my documentation regarding the cosign mortgage, all the paperwork from 3 years ago, all the records of my own financial standing. I'm not going to just walk away and let them keep treating me like this. I'm not going to forgive them or try to repair anything. I've spent 6 years getting into position for this, building up resources, making sure I had leverage, waiting for them to hand me the perfect justification. Saturday morning, one of the attorneys called me back. Her name is Monica, specializes in property law and cosigner rights. We talked for 45 minutes. She confirmed what I already knew. As a cosigner on their mortgage, with an excellent payment history and strong financial standing, I have options, legal options that are going to make their lives very complicated very quickly. Monday morning, I'm meeting with her in person to start the process. I'm also meeting with a financial advisor to discuss the best way to structure what I'm about to do. Marcus texted me Saturday afternoon. asking if I was still mad about Mom's jokes at the party. He said I needed to lighten up, that it was all in good fun, that I was being too sensitive. I didn't respond. Vicky called me Sunday evening, left a voicemail saying I was being dramatic by leaving the party early, that Mom had been stressed about retirement and didn't mean anything by it, that I should call her back so we could talk about it like adults. I haven't responded to her either. Mom and Dad haven't reached out at all. Why would they? In their minds, they were just telling the truth about their failure son who brought cheap flowers and probably stole those too. They have no idea what's coming. They think I'm the family screw-up who's going to slink back eventually, apologize for being too sensitive, accept my role as the disappointment, and everything will go back to normal. But I've been building toward this for 6 years. I've been waiting for them to give me the exact ammunition I needed. And Friday night, in front of 40 people, they handed it to me. I'm not the person they think I am. I'm not broke. I'm not barely surviving. I'm not the failure they've spent 3 decades telling everyone I am. And they're about to find out exactly who I actually am and what I'm capable of when I stop playing the role they assign me. Update 1. Monday afternoon, and I'm sitting in my apartment trying to process the absolute chaos of the last 72 hours because this has escalated way faster than I expected, and I need to get it all down before the next wave hits. The meeting with Monica, the attorney, happened Monday morning at 9 o'clock. Her office is in a professional building downtown, nothing fancy, but legitimate. I brought all my documentation. The original mortgage refinance paperwork from 3 years ago, my cosigner agreement, records showing I've never missed a payment notification, my own financial statements, property records for my duplex, everything. Monica spent 20 minutes reviewing it all while I sat across from her desk. Then she looked up and told me I had 3 viable options as a cosigner with strong financial standing and payment history. Option 1. I could demand to be released from the cosigner obligation, which would require my parents to refinance again without me. And given Dad's credit situation, that would likely mean a higher interest rate or possibly not qualifying at all. Option 2, I could assert my right to protect my financial interest in the property by forcing a sale if I believe the primary borrowers were putting my credit at risk or mismanaging the asset. Option 3, and this is the one that made me sit up straighter, I could exercise my cosigner rights to assume the mortgage entirely if I could demonstrate that I was the more financially stable party and the primary borrowers had engaged in behavior that justified such action. She explained that option 3 was the nuclear option, the one that would require significant legal maneuvering and documentation of financial responsibility versus irresponsibility, but it was technically possible given my position. It would essentially mean taking over their house, forcing them to either buy me out at current market value or vacate. I asked how long something like that would take. She said it depends on how much they fight. It could be anywhere from 3 months to a year. But the initial filing alone would put enormous pressure on them immediately, because once legal action is filed regarding a cosign mortgage, it becomes public record and affects their ability to do anything else with the property. I told her I wanted to start with option 1, demanding release from cosigner obligation, but keeping options 2 and 3 ready if they refuse to cooperate. She said that was smart, gave them a chance to resolve it reasonably before going scorched earth. We spent another 30 minutes drafting a formal letter to my parents, legal language about requesting release from cosigner obligation within 30 days, requiring them to provide proof of refinancing ability or alternative arrangements. Monica said she'd send it certified mail that afternoon, so they'd have it by Wednesday at the latest. I left her office feeling vindicated and terrified at the same time, because this was real now, not just something I'd been planning in my head for 6 years. The meeting with the financial advisor happened at 2 that afternoon. Guy named Elijah, recommended by Monica, specializes in asset protection and strategic financial planning. I laid out everything for him. My investment accounts, the duplex, my current salary, my goals for the next 5 years. Elijah told me that if I ended up taking over my parents' house through option 3, I'd be in a strong position to either keep it as a second rental property or force a sale and walk away with a significant chunk of equity. Their house is worth around $530,000 based on current market comps. They owe about $290,000 on the mortgage. That's $240,000 in equity that I could potentially claim a portion of as the cosigner who's protected the asset. He also warned me that my family would fight this harder than I probably expected, that money and property brings out the absolute worst in people, and I should be prepared for them to make this as ugly as possible. I told him I was counting on it. By the time I got home Monday evening, I had 6 missed calls and 12 text messages. 3 calls from Vicky, 2 from Marcus, 1 from Dad. Messages ranged from confused to angry to demanding. Vicky's text started reasonable. She wanted to know why I was being so distant, why I wouldn't return her calls, whether something was seriously wrong, or if I was just throwing a tantrum about the party. Then they got more aggressive. She said I was acting like a child, that Mom had been joking, that everyone was worried about me, but also frustrated that I was making everything about me again. That last part stuck with me, making everything about me again, like I was the problem for being humiliated in front of 40 people. Marcus' texts were more direct. He said I needed to get over myself, that if I couldn't take a joke, then maybe I shouldn't come to family events, that Mom and Dad were getting older and didn't need me stirring up drama over nothing. He said I should apologize to Mom for walking out and making her retirement party about my hurt feelings. Dad's text was short, just said, "We need to talk. Call me." I didn't respond to any of them Monday night, watched TV, ate leftover pizza, tried to prepare myself for what was coming. Tuesday morning, my phone rang at 7 o'clock. Mom. I almost didn't answer, but something told me this conversation needed to happen before they got the legal letter on Wednesday. I picked up. Mom's voice was tight, controlled angry instead of yelling angry. She told me that Vicky had called her Monday night, very upset about my behavior, that everyone was concerned I was having some kind of breakdown, that my refusal to communicate was immature and hurtful. I let her talk for about 2 minutes. Then I interrupted and asked her directly why she told people I stole food from Best Buy when that never happened. Silence for maybe 5 seconds. Then Mom said she didn't know what I was talking about. That of course it happened, that I'd told her about it myself years ago. I told her that was a lie. I'd never stolen anything from Best Buy, had never been spoken to by management, had quit that job for a better opportunity. I reminded her that I'd heard her telling Marcus and Vicky that story 6 years ago, you in the kitchen, that I'd been standing right there, that she knew it wasn't true. Mom's voice changed, got defensive. She said I must have misunderstood, that she'd gotten the details confused, that it didn't matter now anyway, because that was years ago and everyone makes mistakes. Then she pivoted, said the real issue was me embarrassing her at the retirement party by leaving early and making everything awkward. I asked her why she announced to a room full of people that I was a complete failure for 36 years, why she let Marcus make the food stamps comment, why she agreed when Dad's friend asked if I was the one who got fired for stealing. Mom said she was just joking, that I've always been too sensitive, that the family has always teased each other, and I'm the only one who can't handle it. She said Marcus and Vicky both take jokes fine, that I needed to learn to laugh at myself. I told her there's a difference between teasing and public humiliation, that what happened Friday night wasn't a joke. It was cruelty. Mom got quiet again. Then she said something that made everything click into place. She said that maybe if I'd actually accomplished something with my life, like Marcus and Vicky, there wouldn't be anything to joke about. that she's proud of Marcus for providing for his family and proud of Vicky for her career. But what exactly was she supposed to be proud of with me? That I work some job nobody understands and live in a rundown apartment. And there it was, the real reason. Not that I'd actually failed at anything, but that my success didn't look like the kind of success she could brag about to her teacher friends. Marcus had the pharmaceutical sales job with the company car and the visible lifestyle. Vicky had the hospital administration title and the finance fiancé. I had money and property, but I kept it quiet, so in her mind, it didn't count. I told her I co-signed her mortgage 3 years ago when Marcus and Vicky refused. I told her my credit was the only reason she and Dad got the refinance that saved them $400 a month. I asked her if that counted as accomplishment. Another long silence. Then Mom said that was different. That was family helping family. That it didn't change the fact that I'd spent most of my adult life underachieving and making poor choices. I almost laughed, almost told her right then about the attorney, about the letter coming Wednesday, about what I was about to do. But I held back because I wanted her to get that letter cold. Wanted her to realize what she'd done without any warning. I told Mom I had to go. She started saying we needed to resolve this, that she wanted me to come over for dinner Wednesday night so we could talk everything through as a family. I said I'd think about it. Hung up. Tuesday afternoon, Marcus called. I answered. He launched right in, said Mom had called him crying, that I'd upset her by bringing up ancient history about Best Buy and making accusations, that I was being unreasonable and needed to let things go. I asked Marcus if he remembered telling people at the party that I used food stamps to buy flowers. He said it was just a joke, that I needed to stop being so sensitive. I asked him if he knew that story about me stealing from Best Buy was completely fabricated. He said it didn't matter, that it was years ago, that the point was I'd spent most of my adult life failing, and that was what the jokes were about. I told him I make $73,000 a year in my current position, own a $400,000 duplex, and have over $300,000 in investments and savings. He went completely silent, then said I was lying, that there was no way I had that kind of money. If I did, why would I dress like I shopped at discount stores and drive a 12-year-old sedan and ask Dad for gas money? I told him because that's what the family wanted me to be. So I let them believe it. But the truth was I'd been successful for years while they'd all been treating me like garbage, and I was done pretending. Marcus said this was insane, that if I had money, I would have told someone, that I was clearly making this up to get attention. Then he said something that made me realize how deep this went. He said Mom and Dad had always worried about me, had always tried to help me even though I kept screwing up, and this was how I repaid them, by lying about having money and attacking Mom when she was just trying to enjoy her retirement. I asked him when exactly Mom and Dad had tried to help me. He said Dad gave me gas money. I told him Dad gave me $20 one time 2 years ago when I mentioned my tank was low, and I'd been playing that up ever since as part of maintaining the illusion they all needed. Marcus said I was sick, that I needed professional help, that making up stories about being secretly wealthy was delusional behavior. Then he hung up on me. Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock, Monica texted that the certified letter had been delivered and signed for by my mother. I waited. 2 hours passed. Nothing. Then at 1:15, my phone started blowing up. Dad calling. Mom calling, Marcus calling, Vicky calling. All within 5 minutes of each other. I let them all go to voicemail. Waited 20 minutes. Checked the voicemails. Dad's message was confused and angry. He wanted to know what kind of legal nonsense I was pulling, whether I'd actually hired an attorney to go after them over a mortgage I'd voluntarily co-signed 3 years ago, whether I understood how family destroying this kind of action was. Mom's message was crying, actual sobbing, saying she didn't understand what was happening, that she'd gotten some letter about co-signer release, that this couldn't be real, that I couldn't actually be doing this to them. Marcus' message was rage. Pure rage. He said I was out of my mind, that going after Mom and Dad's house was the lowest thing he'd ever heard of, that cosigners don't have the right to just take over property, that whatever attorney I'd hired was scamming me. Vicky's message was the most interesting. She was trying to sound reasonable, but I could hear the panic. She said we needed to talk immediately, that whatever was going on could be resolved without lawyers, that family doesn't sue family, that there had to be some misunderstanding about the letter. I didn't call any of them back. Texted them all one group message. Told them that I'd requested release from cosigner obligation on their mortgage, and they had 30 days to refinance without me or make alternative arrangements. Said this was non-negotiable, and that all further communication should go through my attorney. Sent Monica's office contact information. My phone rang immediately, all four of them calling at once. I turned it off, sat in my apartment with my laptop open to my bank accounts, looking at numbers I'd spent 6 years building, and wondered if they finally understood that I wasn't the person they'd spent 3 decades telling everyone I was. Thursday morning, I turned my phone back on. 23 missed calls, 37 text messages, 2 voicemails from numbers I didn't recognize. The voicemails were from Aunt Carrie, Mom's sister, asking me to please call her about this situation with my parents. The other was from someone named Marley, apparently Vicky's friend from the party, asking if we could meet up to discuss what was happening, because Vicky was beside herself. Extended family was getting involved. The story was spreading, and based on Aunt Carrie's voicemail, asking me to reconsider destroying my parents' financial security over a disagreement, they were getting Mom and Dad's version of events. This was about to get so much worse before it got better. Update 2. It's been 9 days since I sent that legal letter, and I need to update because this situation has gone completely sideways in ways I didn't fully anticipate, and I'm realizing just how deep the dysfunction in my family actually runs. Thursday afternoon, after I got those voicemails from Aunt Carrie and Marley, I decided to call Aunt Carrie back, because she's always been relatively decent to me, and I figured she deserved to hear my side before the family poisoned her completely against me. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was strained, careful. She said Mom had called her Wednesday night, absolutely hysterical about me trying to take their house, that she didn't understand what was happening. But surely there was some way to work this out without lawyers and legal threats. I spent 20 minutes explaining the entire situation to her. The retirement party humiliation, the 6 years of the fabricated best by theft story, the co-signing 3 years ago that nobody appreciated, the fact that I'd been successful this whole time while they treated me like a failure, everything. Aunt Carrie got very quiet. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. She said Mom had been telling the Best Buy story for 6 years to everyone, not just at family gatherings, but to church friends, to her teacher colleagues, to neighbors. She said Mom had called me her disappointment son so many times that Aunt Carrie had just accepted it as fact, had never questioned whether any of it was true. Then Aunt Carrie said something else. She said 3 years ago when I co-signed the mortgage, Mom had told her it was because I owed them money, and this was how I was paying it back, that I'd borrowed thousands from them over the years, and they'd finally found a way to make me useful. I sat there in my apartment, completely silent, because that was a new lie I hadn't even known about. I'd never borrowed money from them. The gas money thing 2 years ago was $20 that I'd never asked for. Dad had just handed it to me. But Mom had apparently constructed this entire narrative where I was financially dependent on them, and the co-signing was me repaying debt. I told Aunt Carrie that was completely false. She said she believed me because my explanation made sense, and Mom's story had always seemed off. Then she said she couldn't get involved, that this was between me and my parents, but she hoped we could find a resolution that didn't destroy the family. I thanked her for listening and hung up, spent the next hour just staring at my wall, trying to process how many lies Mom had apparently told about me over the years. Friday morning, Monica called. She said my parents had contacted her office Thursday afternoon, wanting to schedule a meeting. She told them she only represented me, but they could retain their own attorney, and the attorneys could communicate. They'd apparently refused, said they didn't need an attorney, because this was just a family misunderstanding. Monica asked if I wanted to meet with them face-to-face, with her present as a mediator. I said, absolutely not. She said that was probably smart, that these situations got emotional fast, and it was better to keep everything formal and documented. Then she told me something that made me realize my parents were in deeper trouble than I'd thought. She'd had her assistant run a basic financial check on their property as part of standard due diligence. My parents had taken out a home equity line of credit 2 years ago, separate from the mortgage I'd co-signed. They currently owed $47,000 on that HELOC. I asked if that affected anything with the mortgage situation. Monica said it complicated things significantly because it meant their debt-to-equity ratio was worse than the refinance paperwork had indicated, and if they tried to refinance now without me, they'd have to disclose that HELOC, which would make approval even harder. She asked if I'd known about it. I said no. She said that was a problem because, as a co-signer, I should have been notified of any additional liens on the property, but it was possible they'd gotten the HELOC through a different lender who didn't check the existing mortgage details thoroughly. I asked what this meant for my options. Monica said it meant option 1. Releasing me from co-signer obligation was going to be nearly impossible for them to accomplish within 30 days because no bank would refinance them with their current debt load and Dad's credit. Option 2, forcing a sale to protect my interest, became more justified. Option 3, taking over the mortgage entirely, became more complicated but also more potentially lucrative because there was more debt to resolve. I told her to send a follow-up letter informing them that I was aware of the HELOC and considered it a material change to the financial arrangement I'd co-signed for, and that I was considering escalating to option 2 if they couldn't provide a viable refinancing plan within the original 30-day window. Monica said she'd draft it and send it Monday. Friday evening, Vicky showed up at my duplex, just appeared at my door around 7. I have a doorbell camera, so I saw her standing there before I opened it. She looked exhausted, angry, scared all at once. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. She started talking immediately, said we needed to resolve this tonight, that what I was doing was going to destroy Mom and Dad financially and emotionally, that I couldn't actually be serious about taking legal action over hurt feelings from a party. I told her it wasn't about hurt feelings, it was about 36 years of being treated like garbage, culminating in public humiliation, while I was literally the reason they could afford their mortgage payment. Vicky said I was exaggerating, that families tease each other, that I'd always been oversensitive. I asked her if she knew Mom had been telling people for 6 years that I stole food from Best Buy. She said yes, everyone knew that story. I told her it never happened. She stared at me like I was speaking another language. I explained the whole thing, how I'd overheard Mom fabricating it 6 years ago, how I'd quit Best Buy for a better job, not been fired, how the entire story was designed to make me look pathetic. Vicky shook her head and said that didn't make sense, that Mom wouldn't just make something like that up, that maybe I'd told her something and she'd misunderstood. I asked Vicky why she said at the party that it was sad I still thought they wanted me there. She said she was just joking around, that I took everything too seriously. I asked her how that was a joke. She didn't have an answer, just said the whole family was like that, and I needed to get thicker skin. Then Vicky shifted tactics, said Marcus had talked to a lawyer friend who told him that co-signers can't just force someone out of their house, that what I was doing was legally questionable and probably wouldn't hold up. I told her that my attorney, who specializes in property law, disagreed, and that I wasn't forcing them out. I was demanding to be released from an obligation they'd begged me to take on while treating me like dirt. Vicky said that if I went through with this, she would never speak to me again, that Marcus would never speak to me again, that I'd be dead to the family. I told her I'd been dead to this family for 36 years. They just hadn't realized I'd stopped caring about their approval. She asked why I'd co-sign the mortgage if I hated them so much. I told her, because 3 years ago, I still had some hope they might treat me better if I helped them, but I'd been systematically documenting every instance of mistreatment since then, just in case it came to exactly this. Vicky's eyes went wide. She said that was psychotic, that normal people don't document family interactions like that I clearly had serious issues. I asked her if normal families publicly humiliate their children at retirement parties. She said I needed therapy and left. Saturday, Marcus showed up at my duplex around 10 o'clock in the morning. I saw him on the doorbell camera. He was alone, looked angry. I didn't open the door. He knocked hard, called my name, said he knew I was home because my car was in the driveway. I spoke through the Ring doorbell speaker, told him to leave. He said we needed to talk face-to-face, man-to-man. I said anything he needed to say could be said on camera. That made him angrier. He said I was being ridiculous, that hiding behind cameras and lawyers was coward behavior, that I needed to open the door and have a real conversation. I told him I had nothing to say to him. He stood there for a minute, then said that if I didn't drop this legal nonsense, he was going to make my life hell, that he had connections and could make things very difficult for me professionally and personally. I told him that sounded like a threat, and I was recording everything, and that threatening someone over a legal property dispute was probably not smart. Marcus kicked my door, not hard enough to damage it, but hard enough to make his point. Then he left. I saved the video footage, sent it to Monica. She said if he showed up again to call the police immediately, that any physical intimidation could be used as evidence that my family was engaging in harassment to prevent me from exercising my legal rights. Sunday afternoon, Mom called from Dad's phone. I almost didn't answer, but I figured I should hear what they had to say. Dad's voice came on, sounded tired and defeated. He said they'd been trying to look into refinancing, but every bank they'd talked to had issues with their debt situation and his credit score. He said the Helic had been for emergency home repairs 2 years ago, that the furnace had died and the roof needed work, and they didn't have the cash on hand. He said they'd planned to pay it down, but then Mom's school had budget cuts that affected her pension payout, and they'd been struggling to keep up with both mortgage payments. I asked why they hadn't told me any of this. Dad said they didn't think it was my business, that I was just a co-signer, not a co-owner. I told him that legally, those were almost the same thing, that major financial decisions affecting a property I'd co-signed for were absolutely my business. Dad asked what I wanted from them, what it would take to make this go away. I said I wanted release from the co-signer obligation, or I wanted full control of the property, with them buying out my interest at current market value. Dad said they couldn't afford either of those things. I asked him why Mom told everyone I stole from Best Buy when it never happened. Long silence. Then Dad said Mom had been stressed about my life choices back then, and maybe she'd exaggerated some things, but it was water under the bridge. I said it wasn't water under the bridge when she was still telling that story at her retirement party 6 years later. Dad said that at the party, Mom had just been making jokes, that she loved me and was proud of me despite everything. I asked him what everything meant. He said my lack of ambition, my refusing to pursue a real career, my inability to maintain relationships, my general failure to launch into adult success. And there was again their complete inability to see that I had been successful, that I'd built wealth and stability, that I owned property, because success to them only counted if it looked like Marcus' pharmaceutical sales job or Vicky's hospital administration title. My quiet accumulation of assets didn't fit their narrative, so they'd simply decided it didn't exist. I told Dad they had 3 weeks left on the 30-day deadline to figure out refinancing. He said 3 weeks wasn't enough time. I said that wasn't my problem. He hung up. Monday morning, Monica sent the follow-up letter about the helic. Monday afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Answered it. Voice on the other end introduced himself as Robert, Dad's